I'm Jen Taylor Skinner, and this is the Electorette. On this special episode, I talk with Neera Tanden, the president of the Center for American Progress. We talk about the Brett Kavanaugh nomination, the incoming votes on the nomination, and of course, we talk midterms and what each and every person can do to win the Senate and the House this November for Democrats. So here is my conversation with Neera Tanden.
Isn't that nice?
Neera Tanden, thank you so much for joining me.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, it means a lot to me, actually, that you took the time to talk to me, actually.
Thank you. That's an important discussion.
Yes, I want to talk about what's happening today because I feel like I'm being yanked from, corner to corner with this whole Kavanaugh nomination, especially with, I think you can just correct me if I'm wrong. Right now, Flake has said he's a yes on the nomination, right? Not just on the debate, but on the nomination. And Murkowski is a no. Right? Mm-hmm. And so now we've got Collins and Manchin.
Yeah. I mean, Flake said that barring some extraordinary event, which he did not anticipate. So I think we should all plan for him to vote yes, I'm sorry. So all eyes are on Senator Collins and on Senator Manchin.
Well, haven't all of the extraordinary events already happened?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's, this debate has obviously been a wrenching one. And truly, we started working on the Kavanaugh nomination at CAP, as he was nominated, and it's been an extraordinary couple of months. But obviously, the last couple of weeks since Dr. Ford's story came forward, I think has been really wrenching for the country, and the number of women and men who've been assaulted. This has been a really fresh wound, and the fact that we're in a situation where Republicans in the Senate are trying to ram through a decision on a Supreme Court nomination in which we're really talking about basically the biggest job promotion of anyone's life, given all the questions that remain, I think is an extraordinary moment. And it's really, I think, a devastating one for the likes of Senator Flake, who claim so much to be focused on integrity and the integrity of the system. And obviously, I think that's basically destroyed by the Kavanaugh nomination.
Do you have any idea of what he was doing? What he was doing last week with the FBI delay, and then, saying that, and I tweeted about this morning, actually, saying that, he would vote no if Kavanaugh lied to the committee. But Kavanaugh's been lying to the committee, and it's been obvious to everyone who's paying attention. He's been lying since the beginning.
Yeah, so I think the challenge for all of us is that we are living in a world where it takes Republican votes to stop Republicans from doing things. And I think what happened to Flake last week was really it just became overwhelming that they were trying to jam this through. And he probably actually did hear from the intensity of those two women, and it really made him rethink why not give it an extra week. And then they ran a process here that was really designed, though, to get an FBI process run by the White House, which in itself is extraordinary, that never spoke to Dr. Ford or Kavanaugh. And I think that tells you that what was really, the fix was sort of in here. And you're absolutely right. Judge Kavanaugh has misled the committee and directly lied multiple times. And there's just a big wink and a nod. And I think Senator Flake said this himself. He's a conservative. He likes to vote for conservative judges. He's been looking for a fig leaf to get to yes. He's not going to run again. So, 1 week difference didn't make a big difference to him. But, I think the truth of this is that if we are expecting, I am so impressed with the leadership of people like Lisa Murkowski and Senator Heitkamp, who's in a really tough reelection, but believed this was the right thing to do. And I think if we're relying on Republican senators to do right by the country, this is only the 3,000th example of how that's going to be false hope for us. And, we are continuing to fight until the last moment of this fight, and we all have to do that. And I know women, I know personally dozens of women who are coming in to town tomorrow for the vote. But if they do nominate Judge Kavanaugh tomorrow, if he does move to the Supreme Court, we have to make sure that we're all active in the elections. And ensure everyone we know is voting so that they can't do this again.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I guess things aren't final. Things could change tomorrow because I think what people should understand is that today isn't a vote for the nomination, right? It's just a vote for whether they should move forward.
Yeah. Today was just a decision to move to debate. So the final vote is tomorrow. It was the last thing we've heard is the final vote is tomorrow.
Yeah. So can you help me understand something? So, with the FBI and there's been lots of talk about the FBI investigation being compromised, right? And first of all, I'm not really sure where those original reports came from, if there was a leak or if there was some, real indicators. It's clear from what we've seen and like the fact that they haven't interviewed a lot of key people. But how is it possible for the White House to influence this FBI investigation and not the Mueller investigation, for instance? Like, I'm not really sure what the relationship is.
That's a question I can actually answer. So in the background check process, so I actually have had a background check myself because I worked in the Clinton and Obama White Houses, and there's a process you go through and a form you fill out, a very, very, very extensive form called an SF-86, and then the FBI actually the FBI actually conducts a background investigation for each of for people who are subject to a security clearance in this case, but they also do it for people who are being nominated for judgeships or other positions. And so the really important issue here is that this is a normal process in which the White House does actually work with the FBI. It's very unusual to prescribe these investigations, but they have the ability to do so because the background check is really to serve the administration and serve the White House in whether it should nominate the person or not. So that's technically why they have the ability. The Mueller investigation is a separate track and is actually created by the Department of Justice has the authority to have a special counsel, name a special counsel to investigate the executive branch itself. And so that's a completely different process. And so in that process, the work of the FBI is handled by Mueller, who's overseen broadly by the Attorney General. He's obviously recused, so in that case, it goes to Rosenstein. But these are really two entirely different practices. Now, I do think if Republicans keep the Senate, and maybe even if not, but if Republicans keep the Senate, they're likely to fire Rosenstein or Sessions or both. Trump is likely to fire those folks, so that's something that we should keep in mind. And then, it would be much easier to impede the investigation.
Yeah. Yeah. So, speaking of midterms and women being energized. So I have this theory, like a lot of people, like everyone, actually, I heard Trump, mocking Dr. Ford at his rally. I think it was in, Mississippi, right? Mm-hmm. And I have this, theory about, what he's doing there, right? So I think that a long time ago, he realized that women were going to be possibly his downfall in this administration. When he saw the numbers of the Women's March and how it outnumbered or overshadowed his inauguration, he knew that this was a moment for women. And so I think what he was saying at that rally and what he's been saying since he's come out and started criticizing, Dr. Ford, he is a misogynist, of course, but I think he was telling his followers that if you're thinking about sympathizing with women, if you're thinking about sympathizing with the Me Too movement or with Dr. Ford, I'm giving you permission to not do that. Right. And so that's my theory. He's giving permission for people who might be, wavering on whether they should vote, Republican in the midterms or in 2020, is giving them permission to say, hey, listen, you don't have to listen to these women. That's just my theory.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious he wants, I guess my take on what he did, which I guess it's just not like a high conflict with what you're saying. My view of what Trump did with Dr. Ford, and he resisted it for a while. But what he was essentially saying is, you know what I'm pretty good at? I'm pretty good at a culture war. I'm pretty good at dividing people against each other. And what he really wanted to do there is drive, men against women, maybe working class people against elites. Dr. Blasey Ford is she's a very well-educated woman. And my take on what Trump was trying to do is to basically say that he doesn't need, he's basically given up on the support of college-educated women and women who are really deeply offended by what he did. And those women have been driving the House electorate. It's college-educated women that are really the backbone of the resistance. And he's basically saying to his supporters, he wants to have a culture war between men and women. And he wants to drive this idea that men are under attack and women's sexual assault is basically, exaggerated, and that Dr. Ford is a liar and that the sympathetic victim is Kavanaugh here. And I think it's not that complicated. I think that's what he was trying to do. And he's trying to gin up, there are a lot of Senate elections and Republican-leaning states. And, I think he's saying, I'm willing to give up the House and take the Senate. And I think that's a kind of depressing notion of politics in America, but I don't think it's any more depressing than putting kids in cages and thinking you can win electorally, or having a Muslim ban and thinking you can win electorally. This is what Trump does. What Donald Trump does is figure out a way to make this everything a zero-sum game between people. And if we lose this fight, the way, the thing to defeat Trump is that, hopefully we'll win this battle and Judge Kavanaugh will not be on the Supreme Court. And that is the number one way to defeat Trump. But the second way to defeat Trump, if we lose this battle, is to make sure what he did does not actually help him win. And the only way we're going to do that is if women, all women, millennial women, older women, younger women, and our male allies, don't think politics is ugly and gross like Trump wants us to think, but actually think it's important for saving our lives. We're like 10 minutes from The Handmaid's Tale here. And if I see one more story about how some group of people don't think voting makes sense, I'm going to literally tear my hair out. Tell you, there are stories about how, and there's data about how intensely seniors are looking at this election, and Gen Xers are looking at this election, but millennials, millennial women, millennial men, don't have high intention to vote, and that's deeply distressing. And this is a different kind of midterm. This is a different kind of politics. There are people engaged, putting themselves on the line in a new way they've never done before in their lives, and I think we really need to figure out how we show up for each other on November 6th. No, it's distressing. And you know what? We have a month to solve it. So we can all talk to the people in our lives and tell them how we're counting on them to actually take the 10 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour even to vote, but go do it. Yeah, so, again, I think we're seeing what's really we should be optimistic about is that, so many people recognize the importance of what's happening. Just the thousands of people who were in the Hart building yesterday who are, basically willing to get arrested for what's happening and, to stop what's happening. That's vital and really important for democracy. And that builds on the people who protested family separation and the, millions of people who marched on the day after Trump was inaugurated. And so that part is inspiring. But what we really need to do now, more than protest, is organize around these elections. And so all of us, every single one of us, is probably within 100 miles of or 50 miles of a special election. Not a special election, a swing congressional district. Their Senate race.
Save on Cox Internet when you add Cox Mobile and get fiber-powered internet at home and unbeatable 5G reliability on the go. So whether you're playing a game at home
Yes, goal!
or attending one live, you can do more without spending more. Learn how to save at cox.com/internet. Cox Internet is connected to the premises via coaxial cable. Cox Mobile runs on the network with unbeatable 5G reliability as measured by Ookla LLC in the U.S. to H 2023. Results may vary, not an endorsement. Other restrictions apply.
You found your person. Now let the Knot help you with everything else. The Knot connects you to the wedding inspo, vendors, venues, and planning tools you need to make your day totally you. Having helped plan 25 million weddings, we've got your back when it comes to every little detail like RSVPs, budgets, and more. Because your wedding comes to life with the connections that matter the most. Get started at theknot.com/audio. The Knot. Let's plan your wedding together.
That need our help, our financial support, our calls, our texts. I really think that, everyone should focus on how they'll feel on November 7th, the day after the election, if Trump has kept the House and the Senate and all these governor's races. Just think about what he will be like. And if that's too horrifying for you, which it is for me, think about and visualize what you're doing this weekend, what you're doing next weekend, what you're doing the weeks after this to take some action to help someone somewhere get elected who will hold Trump accountable. And I just have to say, people become so cynical about politics, but just in the last 24 hours, we've had really a heroic position by Senator Heitkamp and a heroic vote by Senator Heitkamp. She's in a really tough race. She's in a state that Trump won by 20 points. She basically came out against Kavanaugh, knowing that her state, this majority of her state supports Kavanaugh. And her reason was that she needed to look herself in the mirror and say, I'm doing the right thing. And we get so cynical, but so many people, so many political leaders take stands like that. And what we should do is make sure they don't lose for it, but they actually win. Yeah, absolutely. And we're all, people are all doing things. They're engaging in politics. They're doing podcasts. They're reaching out to people in new ways. That's. What's going to save the country is us believing in the democratic process enough to participate. And, Trump tried to defeat Doug Jones. He campaigned against Doug Jones. He campaigned against Connor Lamb. These were both conservative districts, and he was defeated. And I think that tells us that, this unremitting tide can end, but it can end only when we all step up and engage.
Yeah. I have to tell you, Neera, can I call you Neera?
Yeah, please. Of course.
What worries me, and I am personally energized. What worries me is that, often, so for instance, I'll just give you an example. I was out yesterday or a couple of days ago when that presidential alert came across my phone, and everyone around me, I was in a cafe, everyone around me looked, startled when they got the alert. But then, people just kind of went back to what they were doing. And, and I try to set up these phone banks and these canvases, and, there are people who are energized, but I feel like there's so many people in my life that I want to be energized and panicked as much as I am. And I just wonder, how connected is the average person to the urgency of what we need right now? And that really bothers me.
Yeah, no, that's a real thing. I think that, what I believe is an energized person is more important than 20 apathetic people. People's energy is infectious. People's understanding is infectious. And, Trump understood this in his election. He, drove a lot of people to support him and be energized by him. And he whipped up a lot of hatred and anger at Hillary with baseless, just debasing commentary. And so I think the truth is that, Republicans are getting a little jazzed up here, but we're continuing to see intensity levels, high intensity levels amongst Democrats. But there's more to do. The single thing that will stop Donald Trump in his tracks is a Congress, not just a House, a Congress that rejects him. He cannot get another Brett Kavanaugh on the court if there is a Democratic Senate. Democratic House, he can do it. A Democratic Senate, he cannot. And so that's why, I think if you have a relative that you haven't spoken to in a long time who lives in Tennessee or Texas or Arizona or Nevada, and that uncle or aunt was kind of a Trumper and you found it uncomfortable to talk to them before, pick up the phone and call them and call him or her and say why you're angry, what you're upset about. The single thing to move voters is still the direct contact from a person who feels passionately about an issue. It still matters more than anything else. Knocking on a door or sending postcards to vote, the singular emotional connection you can make matters the most. And you're right. Trump has been so crazy for so long. A lot of people get tired of it. He wants people to tune out of politics. He wants people to just focus on the sideshow and forget about what matters. And a lot of young people, I think, are like, everything's ugly. It doesn't really matter. But, I've been in politics a really long time. Just last year, we had an election in Virginia, and Democrat people turned out at historic levels in a midterm, really high levels in a midterm. And within a year, they got a Medicaid expansion that covered 300,000 people with health care. So we can talk about how your vote doesn't matter, but people have health care today in Virginia, and people have health care in the country today because they voted for Barack Obama. Or we voted for Barack Obama. So these votes really matter.
You're speaking to me. How did you know that I was from Tennessee? A, how did you know that? And B, that I have lots of relatives that I have not spoken to since I moved to the West Coast. So, yeah.
You have to call them, and I know, I have my husband's family is from Iowa, and half of them voted for Trump. And the election was a pretty searing experience. It was really divisive. But there are people in my husband's family in Iowa who are up for grabs now. And I've tried to engage with them and talk to them. And, they're actually, I have someone who voted for Trump in his family and in our family who is now likely to vote for the Democratic governor. And it's just a Democratic candidate for governor. And so I think it's really just doing, picking up the phone, calling them, emailing them, asking them if you want to talk about why these things matter. And, you may get rebuffed, but we all have to try. Intensity really matters. Reaching new people really matters. And we all have to do that work because our democracy is at stake.
Okay, you've got me. I'm going to do it.
Excellent.
I'm going to pick up the phone. There's some awkward phone calls for me this weekend.
Let me know how it goes.
I will. Any parting words of wisdom for us?
We really have just a few weeks here. And I think what I learned in the last couple of weeks is that if we want to end this practice. I think what we see with Trump is every moment of kind of national alarm or crisis is one in which he seeks to divide people against each other and attack people and really go after them. And if we want to put this politics behind us, if we want to make this division end, the only way it's going to end is if it's repudiated at the ballot box. So it's a message I take with me everywhere, but really now is the time to think through what you can do with your family, whether, definitely check that you're registered to vote, talk to your friends and neighbors. If you are a little shy, you can do postcards to vote. There's just, every one of us can do a lot of things to change the direction of our country on November 6th and start voting, even ahead of that in early voting states. So that's what I hope we'll all do.
Well, Neera Tanden, thank you so much for joining me today. Your work is so much appreciated.
Thank you, and thank you for all you've been doing and your important voice.
Sensitive.